And welcome one and all to another edition of the Cory Standing Show. I am your host, yours truly, and happy Friday to you all. Hope you had a better Friday than I have because I spent most of the morning sick and throwing up. So Zofran's helping me right now get through this show. Excuse me. With it being the first week of the show being on the air, I didn't want to actually miss a week and then cancel an episode on a Friday of all days. So here we are. And honestly, we have a plethora of topics to get into today that I am very much looking for. Let me rephrase that. Sorry, my head is not in the right place. That I have very much been looking forward to discussing on the air for quite some time. One of them may be a little belated, but we're going to get into the Thunder advancing to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2012. We're going to get into the Knicks staving off elimination against the Indiana Pacers at the Garden in Game 5. We're going to get into what Scottie Pippen said about Michael Jordan in his book Unguarded, because I actually just finished reading that book. My girlfriend's currently in Washington State because her grandfather passed away, unfortunately. So I've had a lot of free time on my hands, and my productive free time is spent reading. So I'm going to react to that. And not only I'm going to react to that, but I'm going to react to James Jones' wild take on Joe Burrow in the facility earlier this afternoon. So Bengals fans, I know you all don't like me, but at the same time, I think you're going to enjoy this episode. But first and foremost, let me say, because I have to pay bills around here, and I am the sole proprietor of this show. Standing Media is my company. We're going to get into today's sponsor. And it is perfect timing considering that summer is upon us. Today's sponsor is Suntan City. Suntan City is now running actually promotions on their membership that end very soon. As you see, $199 for the fast annual membership that gets you access to the fast beds that'll get you dark, golden, and brown really quickly. For people like me who's naturally redheaded, it actually helped me build a base tan, even though the first summer I actually had to spend burning like a lobster. And you can also, 2 days left for this, keep that in mind, $1 to join, unfreeze, or upgrade your membership. Only 2 days left. And of course, 3 wellness spa visits through the end of the year. Suntan City, let yourself shine. So now that we have paid the bills for the day, we're going to actually get into the first topic. And the first topic is the Oklahoma City Thunder. They advanced to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2012 in a dominant win over the Minnesota Timberwolves. In fact, I think this is probably more along the lines of what I expected. And give me a moment while I actually pull up the box score here on my phone, just because I didn't come completely prepared, which is unfortunate. But Thunder eliminate the Timberwolves 124-94. It was an all-around team effort. Of course, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led the way with 34 points and was practically done playing by the start of the fourth quarter because OKC held a 33-point lead at halftime. What a rout, and it's about damn time that this Thunder team put this series to bed. Minnesota had a dominant win in Game 3. Looked like they'd made it a series. I wasn't buying it because I've been on the Thunder train all year. This Oklahoma City Thunder team had a historic regular season, and they're going to cap it off with the championship here in a couple of weeks, whether you like it or not. Doesn't matter if they're playing the Pacers or the Knicks. This Thunder team is going to get it done. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 34 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists. I remember covering Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in college. In fact, I was a broke college student with my former partner in crime, DeMichael Cole, who actually works for he covers the Grizzlies for the Memphis Commercial Appeal and hosts the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. If you want to go look him up on Twitter, it's at DeMichael C, Twitter/X. Miss you, DeMichael. Hope you're doing well. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 34 points. Chet Holmgren chipped in with 22 points and 7 rebounds. He was 2 of 4 from the 3, 8 of 13 from the field. Unbelievable efficiency. And then you had Jalen Williams, 19 points, 8 rebounds, 7 of 14, 1 of 4 from 3. And as much as I love Jalen Williams, he cost me 2 parlays because he didn't score 2 more points and didn't hit 1 more 3. Man, if that lob pass had just been a little bit more on target. But we'll get into that another time. And then Lou Dort, 4 of 10 from the 3, 12 points. Finally found his stroke from beyond the arc. Well, sort of. 40%. But the Thunder going to the NBA Finals for the first time since 2012. I vividly remember that time. That was my heyday as a basketball fan because I'm a Miami Heat fan. And, of course, we had the big three at that time. But that was the first time since Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden were on the – and Serge Ibaka, no disrespect, we're all on the same team. The first time the Thunder have been to the finals since, and this time they're going to get it done. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander right now is playing at another level. I can't sit here and definitively say he's the best player in the league, considering that there's Nikola Jokic, considering that there's Giannis Antetokounmpo, and a plethora of other players I get into. Luka Doncic, even though his conditioning the last 2 years has been a glaring weakness. And it's honestly been the reason the Mavericks didn't win a championship, and it was the reason the Lakers got eliminated in the first round. You still got LeBron, even though I put LeBron more in the 5 to 10 range now, but he's 40 years old, still doing what he's doing. So you can't knock that. But Oklahoma City hold Minnesota to 94 points. This game was over practically, it seemed, before it even started. And it's disappointing because at this point, we're wondering, is Ant-Man going to get it done in Minnesota? That's my question that arises mostly from this entire game. Because Anthony Edwards at times looks like the best player in the NBA. He looks like a Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant reincarnate. And other times, he just looks like he could give a you-know-what less about the Minnesota Timberwolves and their fans. And do I mean that by what he says and does and his effort? No. I mean that by Anthony Edwards might not realize his full potential until he gets out of Minnesota. It was like that with Kevin Garnett. It's been like that for every player that's been in Minnesota. I mean, it's Minneapolis. It's not a basketball market. It's a football market. So but this is all about the Thunder to me, to be completely honest. I think the Timberwolves overachieved by getting to the Western Conference Finals. I think that was a testament to Ant-Man's greatness. And I think that was a testament to the cohesion that the Wolves have developed over the last year. You know, consecutive conference finals appearances. That's nothing to scoff at. But this Thunder team is something else. And I am very much looking forward to seeing what they do in the NBA Finals, because this is a team that by the national analyst standards has been doubted, has been overlooked, because they don't have a bona fide number two. Even though Jalen Williams did average over 20 points a game and he was an all-star this year. But I will agree with that sentiment. They don't have a bona fide number two, because we will see if Jalen Williams continues this run that he's on this year. We'll see if he can replicate this moving forward, I should say. But at the end of the day, man, Oklahoma City, it's great for their fans. It's great for their fan base, because I don't care what anybody says, hindsight's 2020, but the Miami Heat were winning that championship in 2012. They beat them in 5 games. I know most of them were close games, but it really never felt like the Heat were out of control of that series, even though the Thunder had ample rest before that series, considering they beat the Spurs in 6, and the Heat had to actually go to 7 games to beat an aging Boston Celtics team. I remember the national media narratives from that series. Oh, trust me. Stephen A. Smith, who was on the Miami Heat train all year that year, suddenly picked the Thunder. Could I believe that at that time that I was siding with Skip Bayless when he picked the Heat? Lord have mercy. And we'll get into Skip Bayless at another time on this show in the next coming weeks, because Skip Bayless actually had a very, very interesting debate posted on YouTube where he took on 25 sports fans. And I really, really want to react to that, because it is prime cream de la crop content for something like this show. But overall, props to the Thunder, heading to the finals. They will be hosting it no matter if New York or Indiana advances. And to be completely honest, since the beginning of the playoffs, I picked the Thunder to win it all, and I'm going to go down with the ship. But we're going to move on to the next topic, and that is the New York Knicks. The New York Knicks staying alive in Game 5 against the Pacers. Let me go ahead and pull up the numbers here. Winning 111-94. Once again, it was the same type of narrative. The Knicks controlled from the jump. Jalen Brunson, 17 points in the first half. Finished with 32 for the game on 12 of 18 shooting, 4 of 7 from the three-point line. Karl-Anthony Towns, another big game for Cat, 24 points, 13 rebounds, 10 of 20 shooting. Then Miles Bridges, OG Anunoby chipped in with 12 and 11 respectively. And then obviously you had Josh Hart coming off the bench with 12. I came on the show on Wednesday and told you all that the Knicks would win this series in 6. And obviously I was wrong because Tyrese Halliburton had a phenomenal game in game 4. Triple-double, 32 points. I believe it was 15 assists, 12 rebounds, something along those lines. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the same old story with Tyrese Halliburton reared its ugly head in game 5. And that's because Tyrese Halliburton actually, crazy enough, he averaged 18 points a game. He was an all-star. 18 points a game is very good, but it's not superstar numbers. And we've had a lot of people going on social media and various talk shows recently saying this, Tyrese Halliburton's the next superstar. And I just haven't seen it. Because let me pull this up really quick. The numbers, this is alarming in terms of Tyrese Halliburton's superstar status. Outside of game 1 and 4 against the Knicks, Tyrese Halliburton averaging 14 points a game, below average, 8 assists, nothing to scoff at, 4.7 rebounds, and he's shooting 25% from the three-point line. What are we debating here? Tyrese Halliburton's a very good player. He's a star. He's not a superstar. Could I be wrong in the future about that? Sure. Anyone can develop with time and with experience, because regardless if the Pacers lose to the Knicks in 7 or if they lose to the Thunder, which I don't think, I'm completely honest, unless the Knicks find a way to pull their head out of their behind and make the finals, I don't think it's going to be a very competitive series. Regardless, Tyrese Halliburton has to look himself in the mirror and realize he needs to be that guy for the Pacers if they ever want to get over the hump of winning a championship, which, heaven forbid, I don't think they ever will. They didn't with Reggie Miller, who's a much better player than Tyrese Halliburton. They didn't with the Paul George, Roy Hibbert, David West incarnate, Lance Stevenson incarnate that thought they were as good as the Miami Heat, but but in reality, us who actually know the game, realize that they weren't ever going to beat them. I mean, you got to blow in someone's ear just to stave off elimination in game 5. What am I even really talking about here? But, good for the Knicks. Honestly, if we're being real, the Knicks should be leading this series 3-2 because they should not have lost game 1. But I could say if the Miami Heat hadn't blown a 15-point lead with 6 minutes to go against the Dallas Mavericks in 2011, maybe the Heatles would actually have lived up to their hype. You can't live on what ifs. And this society is built on what ifs. But at the end of the day, it's about wins and losses. It's a short menu in sports. It's wins and losses. And it's about what you contribute to said win or loss that people are going to remember. And ultimately, the New York Knicks haven't been to an NBA Finals since 1990. I believe it was 98, 99 against the Spurs. They made it as an 8th seed. We know that they really had no chance. Pacers haven't been to the finals since 2000, 2001. I'm remembering incorrectly. I know they were against the Kobe and Shaq Lakers, and they got pardon my language, they got their asses spanked in 5 games. They haven't been to the finals since then either. So regardless, we're going to see a new team in the finals. Well, not brand new, but you know what I mean. But overall, I think that can the Knicks come back and win this series? I don't think so. Talent-wise, on paper, could they? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they came back from 20 points down in Game 3 at Indianapolis. It seemed like that may have been a launching board for them, but it ultimately wasn't. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to how you play as a team, and the Pacers have overall played as a team better than the Knicks have. I do believe they're overall better as a cohesive unit than New York is. New York may have more individual talent, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, all those guys. Josh Hart's, the ultimate glue guy, like a Shane Battier, if you're, living in the 2011 to 12, 8 and 9, even with the Houston Rockets era that I was living in. But we'll see what happens. Would I be unhappy if the Knicks went to the NBA Finals and came back and won this series? Absolutely not. Because I think the Knicks will give the Thunder a better series than the Pacers will. I think the Pacers have a chance of getting swept. by this Thunder team, or at least gentleman's sweep, losing in 5. So we'll see what happens. But before we get to next topic, I'm going to read some of your comments in the live chat. We only have one current viewer at the moment, which I do appreciate. You know, we got to build up our brand and we got to build up our, professionalism. But looks like Trevor Scott asks me, could LeBron end up in New York? No, Trevor, that ship sailed a long time ago. He ultimately chose Miami over New York in 2010, and that would have been the best chance he had at joining the Knicks, considering they had a prime Amari Stoudemire coming to that team, and it was supposed to be his era. Nobody saw Melo coming at that point when LeBron was a free agent in 2010. So, could LeBron end up in New York? No, absolutely not. His family's in LA. I think he's going to finish his career as a Laker, regardless if he wins another championship or not. I don't think he will. As a Miami Heat fan, I wish he could win one more just because I don't really have much animosity towards him leaving the Heat. But ultimately, at the end of the day, no, he's not going to end up in New York. The only way LeBron's going to end up in New York is when he catches a flight out there to do the Jimmy Kimmel show, or when he does, the Today Show, or whatever interview he's going to be doing. That's the only way LeBron's going to end up in New York. All right, so SRT Outlaw, who is actually my brother Cody, thank you for tuning in, man. Can't wait to see you later tonight. Says Indy to the finals. Very well could be the case. They're going back to Indianapolis for closeout Game 6. That place is going to be rocking. That place is going to be rocking. It's going to be loud as hell, and I cannot wait to watch that game tomorrow night. I wish it was tonight, to be completely honest. That is going to be a madhouse because Indianapolis sports fans are crazy. In a good way. I don't like you. I don't like any of you. But you're great fans. That's why I don't like you. It's because you make my life a living hell when the Ravens lose to the Colts or when the Heat lose to the Pacers, which now happens quite often because the Heat aren't any good. But wait a second. I'm still answering questions in the chat. Trevor Scott says, let's not pass over. You spoke on the NFL, but didn't mention top front runner for Coach of the Year, Ben Johnson. Listen, Ben Johnson could win Coach of the Year this year. The Bears have a lot of potential with that offense, but it ultimately falls down on if the quarterback's going to live up to the hype. I really don't care about whether he paints his nails or not. I get manicures and pedicures done. I just get the clear coat, but who's not going to walk into a nail salon and want them to rub your feet? Come on now. Who really gives a you-know-what about what Caleb Williams does in his free time? I saw Ray Allen paint his toes green in the 2010 NBA Finals, and guess what he did that game? He dropped 8 3-pointers in a game. That was, I believe, that still stands as the NBA Finals record for most threes in a game. Is anyone criticizing Ray Allen? No. Ray Allen went to the Heat in 2012-13 and was a big you could argue the reason why the Heat won the 13 championship, other than the fact that LeBron went crazy in the fourth quarter, which I'm just going to sit here and say this now. You will hear me say this in the near future. LeBron James, he had 2 really bad turnovers in that final minute of that 2013 Game 7 against the Spurs. They were bad, but the Heat would have been in that game without him. He was the engine that drove the train on that Miami Heat team. That's why Dwayne Wade had to take a step back. You remember Dwayne Wade averaged over 26 points a game in that 2011 NBA Finals, and they lost in 6 games after they had a 2-1 lead on an inferior Dallas Mavericks team. I will go to my grave. The Dallas Mavericks were not better than the Miami Heat in 2011. You play that series 10 out of 10 times, that is the only time that the Mavericks win. And the only reason they won is because LeBron James crumbled under the pressure. And as much as I love LeBron James, that is ultimately what sailed the GOAT ship for me, was that series at that time. Not in hindsight, at that time. There is no excuse for him to not have beaten that team with the likes of Deshaun Stevenson and an older Sean Marion and Jason Terry guarding him. JJ Barea at one point was switched off on the post on LeBron James, the second greatest basketball player to ever live, not by a very big margin. MJ's got the number one spot for me, but it's not by a very big margin. It's really not. That's why I love it when people call me a Jordan homer, Cody. It's because Jordan wasn't my favorite player of all time. As a fan, it was Dwayne Wade, who actually was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to meet and interview in his final season when I was a student reporter at the Daily Beacon and at the University of Tennessee. But next one, LeBron went to Cleveland to bring them back. We knew that was going to happen. I mean, LeBron James, if you really look at it, I got to phrase this carefully. LeBron James has the greatest career of any basketball player that's ever lived. Michael Jordan didn't play this long. He didn't take care of his body like this. He was smoking cigars. He was drinking cognac. He was gambling. But peak for peak, MJ is the GOAT. But MJ has nothing on LeBron when it comes to longevity or being a spokesperson for the NBA. Remember Michael Jordan, Republicans buy sneakers too. It's true. But he wasn't speaking out for black causes. He donates privately to black causes, but he doesn't necessarily, he definitely didn't when he was a player come out and speak out because he didn't want to hurt his brand. LeBron, to his credit, spoke out for what's right, regardless of his brand. And his brand he's a billionaire before he even retires. You can't say anything else about that. And this guy came from a single parent household with no structure in place because his mom they were moving from place to place and she was in so many different, I'm not even going to get into that because that's, a topic for another day. But at the end of the day, no, you're right. SRT Outlaw, AKA my brother Cody. LeBron went to Cleveland to bring them back. And that's admirable. That's the biggest achievement of his career. And honestly, he wouldn't be my second greatest player of all time if he had stayed in Miami. He may have won more rings, but he didn't have to go through that gauntlet of adversity to win one of them, except for in 2012. I actually thinking of it, we're going to save this for another show because those 2012 and 2013 seasons, he had to overcome a lot to become a champion for the first and second time. And both showed, mental fortitude. He's been to 10 NBA finals. You can't sit here and say guys mentally weak without that. But the last chat we're going to get into before we get into the next topic, which I think is the most anticipated one, is Trevor Scott. I believe he's talking about the Chicago Bears here, but had to bring a secondary. Trevor, no. Bosch's situation nobody saw coming, but at the same time, I think if the Heat had three-peated, he would have stayed for at least one more year. He said that so himself. But going back to Cleveland was what was right for his career, and I don't blame him for that. That's why if the Miami Heat aren't in it, I'm rooting for LeBron. And I'm going to be very sad when he retires and when he leaves, just because it's going to be, not only the entertainment, but we've never seen a basketball player better for as long. No, in hindsight, it was the smartest thing he could have done. The only reason he would have stayed was if the Heat would have three-peated. And honestly, the Heatles, they only won 2 out of 4. In my mind, that's a disappointment. They were too talented not to win at least 3 in a row. That Dallas series, that's why it's such a big stain, is because that Dallas team was not better than Miami. They were up 15 with 6 and a change to go in game 2. They were up 9 with 9 minutes and change to go in game 4. They were ahead in game 5 with about 3 minutes and change left to play. They were ahead in game 6 when LeBron was actually hitting his jump shots. But he kept relying on the jumper because it was falling for him in the previous 2 series. And then he wasn't very much of a consistent shooter at the time. When it stopped falling for him, he didn't decide to go drive to the basket because of Dallas' zone defense. He decided just to keep shooting because he thought it would fall, and it didn't. At Dynasty, I can't go Dynasty, man. 2 of 4. I'm a Miami Heat fan, so it hurts me to say that. They should have been a Dynasty, but ultimately they were not. And even though it wasn't an epic failure of an era, it was It definitely wasn't what it should have been. Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7. That's all everyone's ever going to remember. But we're going to go ahead and go on to the next topic. And the next topic is something that I have been waiting to talk about on this show for a long time. And I am so looking forward to this. So, Scottie Pippen has come out with a book. It's long in the rear view, so I'm actually kind of late to the party. Scottie Pippen came out with his memoir, and it's called Unguarded. It is a fantastic book. I love it. I loved reading it. But Scottie Pippen in that book had some choice words about his running mate, Michael Jordan. Michael Jeffrey Jordan, the greatest player in American sports history. Scottie Pippen in this book said, Michael was right. I was upset with him. It was because The Last Dance, the 10-part ESPN documentary about the Chicago Bulls' final championship season, 97-98, which millions of people watched during the final weeks of the pandemic, with no live sports on TV, The Last Dance for 5 straight Sunday nights starting in mid-April provided a much-needed distraction from the new normal we suddenly found ourselves in. There was only so much news about hotspots and hospitalizations and deaths anyone could absorb. I'm not going to go ahead and get into this. I'm saying I've got the book right here. I just finished reading it. And Scottie Pippen's lying. Quite frankly, when it comes to this, Scottie Pippen's lying. Scottie Pippen, as he's admitted, saw the documentary before it came out. Every single bit of it. Scottie Pippen demanded no money when he first originally sat down to be interviewed for the documentary. And Scottie Pippen signed off on the documentary's release. So Scottie Pippen comes out with this book, Unguarded, which is a very good book. I enjoyed reading it because Scottie Pippen came from a very underprivileged background. No matter if it was when it was childhood, when he got to high school, when he got to college, he fought his way to be where he was at, and he deserves all the praise and credit for it. But Scottie Pippen now is biting the hand that feeds him. And no, he's cutting off the hand that feeds him. Because Michael Jeffrey Jordan is the baddest you-know-what that ever stepped foot on the basketball court. Nobody was more feared and revered than that guy. He's the reason that Scottie Pippen is a 6-time champion and can sit there on podcasts and say, I was better than LeBron because what do you want more, individual accolades or championships? No. Scottie, stop it. Stop it. Sorry, I had to spray my cat because they were misbehaving. Scottie Pippen couldn't tie LeBron James' sneaker shoestrings. Was he a great all-around player for his era? Yes. Was he the perfect complement to Michael Jordan? Yes. But listen to this quote, and I have this verbatim on my phone from the book because I'm not going to take it out and read it here live on the air. Quote, except Michael was determined to prove to the current generation of fans that he was larger than life during his day, which he was. Still larger than LeBron James, the player many consider his equal, if not his superior. The only people that think LeBron James is superior than Michael Jordan are Generation Z and Millennial fans. As good as he's been, as great as he's been, as fantastic as he's been, I never thought that. But we're going to go ahead and keep going. So Michael presented his story, not the story The Last Dance, as our coach, Phil Jackson, billed the 97-98 season once it became obvious the two Jerrys, owner Jerry Reinsdorf and general manager Jerry Krause, may he rest in peace, were intent on breaking up the gang no matter what had happened. As Krause told Phil in the fall of 97, you can go 82-0 and it won't make a difference. This will be your last season as coach of the Chicago Bulls. ESPN sent me links to the first 8 episodes a couple of weeks in advance. As I watched the doc at home in Southern California with my 3 teenage boys, I couldn't believe my eyes. What do you mean you couldn't believe your eyes? You signed off on it being released and being put on the air. What do you mean you couldn't believe your eyes? Scotty, I'm just trying to get down to the crux of this argument. What do you mean you could not believe your eyes? Is this about Michael Jordan as the basketball player? Or is this about Michael Jordan as the father whose son is engaged to your ex-wife? What is this really about, Scotty? Granted, I can't say that if I was in a similar situation, I wouldn't feel the same way. But you were in the trenches with this dude. You won 6 championships with this guy. You were in battles with the bad boy Pistons, the Showtime Lakers, the Clyde Drexler-led Portland, the Charles Barkley-led Phoenix Suns. Then you go to Gary Payton and Sean Kemp, and then the Malone Stockton Jazz. How many times were you sitting next to Michael Jordan smoking a cigar, celebrating a championship, knowing that you weren't the driving force behind it? 6 times, probably. 6 times. And we're going to go on with another quote from the book. Even in the second episode, which focused for a while on my difficult upbringing and likely path to the NBA, which Scottie Pippen, you came from a very small upbringing in Arkansas. You went actually to a school that my former coworker, Lori Tucker at WATE 6 on your side went to. You overcame the odds. There's nothing to scoff at when it comes to your path to the NBA, but you're sitting here talking about Michael Jordan as if he was a detriment to your career. Let me keep reading. I was nothing more than a prop. His best teammate of all time, he called me. He couldn't have been more condescending if he tried. What are you talking about once more? Michael Jordan literally went on worldwide TV during a worldwide pandemic and said, you cannot speak Michael Jordan without Scottie Pippen. What does that translate to for the person that has common sense? There is no Michael Jordan without Scottie Pippen. I wouldn't be known of who I was without you. But you're going to sit here and say this just because you're pissed off that his son is engaged to your ex-wife. At the end of the day, what are we talking about? And he goes on second thought, I could believe my eyes. I spent a lot of time around the man. I knew what made him tick. How naive was I to expect something else, anything else? How naive you were to expect anything else? You knew all this stuff. Before the documentary was released, you signed off on it. You didn't demand any money for it, which you're now upset about. And my cats are letting their opinion be known. I guess they don't like my loud voice, but they'll live. What? You want to make your opinion known, Webb? Here. Come on up. Webb's got something to say. Say it, buddy. Say it. Say it. Is MJ the GOAT? Say it. I guess he's a little camera shy. I'm going to go ahead and put him down. But Scottie Pippen, many people will use these statements as a way to say that LeBron James is the GOAT. And of course, I got people in the chat. Dang, the whole episode gonna be a Jordan Glaze, bro. No, we're about to end it here soon. But you're sitting there saying that Scottie Pippen. I mean, nothing stops Scottie Pippen from being the MVP of one of 6 NBA Finals. Magic Johnson. I mean, Kareem was the Finals MVP. James Worthy was the Finals MVP, and Magic is a top 5 player of all time. Same thing with Larry Bird, Cedric Maxwell. You had players like Dennis Johnson, Kevin McHale. I mean, they didn't win. Cedric Maxwell won a Finals MVP. They didn't. But what stopped Scottie Pippen, if he was that great, from winning Finals MVP in one of those, just one of those series where he could have been the driving force? If he was that great, Scottie Pippen went on a podcast and said, Who do you want more, me or LeBron? You want championships or individual accolades? He's saying he's better than LeBron. This isn't Jordan Glaze. This defends LeBron too, because LeBron is eons above Scottie Pippen in terms of a player. Eons. Scottie Pippen isn't leading anyone to a championship. He proved that the season after Michael Jordan left. The most Scottie Pippen's ever averaged in a season was 22 points a game. LeBron James has averaged more than 30 in a game for a season. The Bulls actually made the conference semifinals after MJ left. That's it. That was the best. That's the part. And then obviously Scottie Pippen had no success in Houston after MJ retired the second time, and had no success they had some success in Portland, but they did lose Game 7 to Kobe and Shaq. And they blew a 15-point fourth quarter lead to do it. Don't forget that. Don't forget that whatsoever. But no, at the end of the day, this comes down to Scottie Pippen being bitter. I love Scottie Pippen as a player. He is deservedly a top 75 player of all time. But reading that, you're literally biting the hand that feeds you, bro. You really are. Nobody would know who Scottie Pippen is if it wasn't for Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was the reason Scottie Pippen became who he was. He was Scott Pippen when he got drafted. He wasn't Scottie. Nobody knew who he was. He averaged 7 points a game his first season. Than a year before. I don't know what you're saying by that. Only lost 3 to 5 games more than a year before. You have to clarify what you mean by that. But I've been waiting to talk about this for a long time. Scottie Pippen needs to shut his mouth. Nothing stopped Scottie Pippen from sitting on the bench when he was like, from migraine against the Pistons in Game 7, when Jordan was on the bus crying in the arms of his father after because he didn't think he could win, because he had tried so hard. Same thing with LeBron in 2008 when he walked off the floor crying against the Celtics. He's like, what more can I do? What more can I do? And then Scottie Pippen's going to sit here and trash Michael Jordan in a book that, honestly, it's a great book, but at the same time, what are you talking about, bro? What are you talking about? You think if Scottie Pippen had been drafted to the Seattle Supersonics, we'd know who he was? No, because he ain't leading no team to no championship, and let alone 6. I don't know. And yeah, I'll give it to you, Cody. When Michael Jordan left, they had a great season that year, and Scottie Pippen could have led the Bulls over the hump, but he didn't. Regardless of that Hugh Hollins call, he didn't. The New York Knicks made the finals that season. That's the second to last time the Knicks made the finals. But overall, I can't sit here and say that, but at the end of the day, Scottie Pippen needs to get off his high horse, and Scottie Pippen needs to realize that Michael Jordan supported him through thick and thin. When Scottie Pippen signed that bad contract that Jerry Reinsdorf, and we ain't even going to get into Jerry Reinsdorf, and Michael Jordan told him, do not sign this contract. You are worth more than that. And he did. Would I have done the same thing? Probably, but I'm not as valuable to my profession as Scottie Pippen was to his. Michael Jordan, Jerry Reinsdorf, of all people, a billionaire, wet behind the ears owner that's probably never played sports in his life, told you, do not sign this contract. And you did. Like I said, would I have done the same thing? Yes, but I'm not as valuable to my profession nor the world as Scottie Pippen was to his. So we'll leave that to bed. Don't want too much 90s Bulls talk on my podcast because I know that's not what we're looking to hear. But Lord have mercy. I don't know what Scottie's thinking. But that leads us into the next topic. And the next topic is FanDuel actually tweeted out its NFL GOAT list for each team. And we're going to go through each team and we're going to see if they got it right based on everything that's available to us. So I'm going to go ahead and list it out. And we're going to go through each team step by step. And we're going to say we agree or disagree. And we as in me. So number one, we're going with the Arizona Cardinals. Larry Fitzgerald, no doubt. That's not even a question. Larry Fitzgerald was something to watch in his day. Even when he was old and quote unquote decrepit, he was still making plays. I remember that game against the Packers, I believe it was in 2016 when Carson Palmer was the quarterback. Larry Fitzgerald, man, he was something else. Atlanta Falcons, Matt Ryan. A lot of people, I wish I could sit here and say Julio Jones. I wish I could sit here and say Michael Vick, but Michael Vick completed 56% of his career passes. Michael Vick never led the Falcons to a Super Bowl. Matt Ryan won a regular season MVP and led the Falcons to a Super Bowl, which they should have won. The only reason they didn't win it was because one of the greatest athletes in the history of sports was on the other side. And he decided to pull off one of the greatest comebacks in sports history and come back from 28-3 down. Baltimore Ravens, Ray Lewis, can't argue there. I do think it'll be different when it's all said and done. I do think Lamar Jackson will be in that place, but Baltimore, Ray Lewis, you can't argue. He brought the franchise 2 Super Bowls as a defensive player and was one of the only Super Bowl defensive MVPs. Next, we're going to the Buffalo Bills, Bruce Smith. I can't argue there. O.J. Simpson, maybe, if he didn't kill people, maybe if he brought the Bills a championship, maybe. Phil Simms, if they won 1 or 2 of those Super Bowls, maybe. But Bruce Smith, I'm comfortable with sitting there. Get to the Carolina Panthers and Cam Newton. This is a tough one because you had Luke Kuechly, Steve Smith, who did get the Panthers to a Super Bowl. And honestly, they probably were closer to winning that Super Bowl than the Cam Super Bowl when he didn't jump on a fumble. But Cam did win an MVP. Steve Smith did not win an MVP. But I don't know. I think Cam Newton / Steve Smith will be appropriate. Chicago Bears, Walter Payton. Trevor, if you're still tuning in, there's no doubt in my mind Walter Payton is the greatest Chicago Bear ever. He helped them win a Super Bowl in 1985. It's unfortunate that he's no longer with us. He's one of, if not the greatest pound-for-pound running back ever. So I can't argue with that. Cincinnati Bengals, Anthony Munoz, what he had, obviously in terms of individual talent and impact on the team, yeah. Boomer Esiason won 1 MVP, but it was sort of like an Ickey Woods one-hit wonder. Chad Johnson was a wonder to behold in terms of his foot speed, in terms of his touchdown celebrations, but it never led to team success. So can't argue that. Anthony Munoz, I think that's appropriate, but I think when it comes to when it's all said and done, it'll be Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase, depending on who has more of a slightly more of an impact by the time their careers comes to an end. Jim Brown, I don't have to even discuss that. Emmitt Smith, I don't believe I have to discuss that either. He was a better player than Troy Aikman. He was on par skill set wise as Michael Irvin for his position. He played a game with a separated shoulder. And like I said, Dallas was one of the greatest dynasties of the 90s. It's a shame. Honestly, it's crazy they didn't win more than 3 Super Bowls. Denver Broncos, John Elway, no argument there. Detroit Lions, Barry Sanders, no argument there. Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers. This is more than I think about it, probably it's correct. Only because Aaron Rodgers has more MVP awards than Brett Favre. They both brought Green Bay 1 Super Bowl. At least Brett Favre got to 2. But I can't go against that because Aaron Rodgers is arguably the greatest thrower of the football I've ever seen. Houston Texans, J.J. Watt, I believe it's 3 or 4, correct me if I'm wrong, chat, Defensive Player of the Year awards. Can't go against that. Indianapolis Colts, Peyton Manning, obviously. Probably should have 2 Super Bowls, but he did choke in that one against the New Orleans Saints, and that ended up being Peyton Manning's overall legacy was a playoff choker, which is unfair, but it's actually honestly true. But we're going to go on. Fred Taylor, Jacksonville Jaguars, I can't argue there. Can't argue against that one. I'm going to go ahead and take the ticker off the bottom just so I can actually see. Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. What are we talking about here? It's obvious. Patrick Mahomes is the most talented quarterback I've ever seen with my eyes, even though with his dad bod, and he's not as good a shape as Lamar. It's not quite as accurate as a passer, from a pure passer standpoint as Joe Burrow, but Patrick Mahomes just gets it done. Even in the years when the Chiefs aren't what they were, he still went into Baltimore against the number 1 seed, number 1 defense, and the MVP in Lamar Jackson and got it done 17-10. Las Vegas / Oakland Raiders, Marcus Allen. I can't argue that either. It's unfortunate that mostly what I remember from Marcus Allen is the fact that he snagged OJ's wife after him and probably was one of the contributing reasons to why. No. Let me backtrack that. He was one of the quote unquote reasons that OJ became such an abusive ex-husband, but we're going to leave that there. Chargers, LT, LaDainian Thompson, no doubt. No argument there. Rams, Aaron Donald, no argument there. Dolphins, Dan Marino. Vikings, Randy Moss. Patriots, Tom Brady, and Saints, Drew Brees. Lawrence Taylor, Joe Namath, Reggie White. You have no argument with the and Steelers, even Mean Joe Green. He was the glue to that 70s Steelers steel curtain unit that helped Terry Bradshaw win 4 Super Bowls. Terry Bradshaw, if you look at his numbers, he wasn't that great. He was sort of like a Joe Flacco type. I'll be completely honest, Joe Flacco's numbers are better than Terry Bradshaw's. But we remember him, because he won all those Super Bowls. We remember him because he was a part of the team that was carried by the steel curtain in the 70s. And he was carried by guys like the likes of Lynn Swann and, I can't really get into it right now just because I don't really have it pulled up on my phone. I'm not the most educated on the 70s NFL era, but I can't argue against that. And then San Francisco, Jerry Rice, who I think is the greatest football player that ever lived outside of Tom Brady. Can't really argue against that. Russell Wilson, the Seahawks, he's a winner. Can't argue against that. But Tampa Bay, Derek Brooks, at the end of the day, I can't argue that. Tampa Bay has such a short – ow! Sorry, y'all. My cat is latched onto my foot, 4 toes in with claws. Webb. I'll deal with him later. Ow. Tennessee Titans / Houston Oilers, Warren Moon. Can't argue against that, and I cannot argue with Darryl Green as the greatest player that ever suited up for the Washington Commanders / Redskins. Ow. This cat doesn't stop you all. You're going to see a cat murdered on live podcast television. But we're going to go ahead and get into the primary topic of this show. So as you all know, I'm a very big fan of sports media. I watch almost every single podcast show throughout the day just to ingest my content and just to keep me motivated. Well, James Jones of the facility, former Green Bay Packer, had a choice words about Joe Burrow earlier today on the facility. And we're going to go ahead and play this, and we're going to react to it live time. So producers, if you all would play the clip of James Jones' take on if Joe Burrow is a top 5 quarterback if the Bengals miss the playoffs for a second straight consecutive season. Roll the clip.
Well, I'm not, so I'm finna just let the quarterback have it in this situation right here. So first off, no, I am not going to have him in that elite conversation because I can't put him in that elite conversation if it's 3 years in a row you do not make the playoffs. All right, so now, I know the quarterback is going to say, well, his defense gave up 35 points a game and all this funny stuff and all that. So let's just talk about the losses real quick for Joe Burrow. All right, let's talk about it. I want to show y'all the losses, too. So week 1, I see it. Look at them, right? So week 1, we're going to break this stuff down, too. So those is Joe Burrow's losses. So let's start week 1, right? Joe Burrow, loss. Yep. 164 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 picks. Ugly. Jacoby Brissett, 130 passing yards, right? Played the same, right? His team lost, all right? Let's go to week 2. Joe Burrow, 258 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 fumble. Patty Mahomes, the defense ain't no good. That's why they lost that. Patty Mahomes, 151 passing yards, 2 interceptions by the defense. And they lost. Why they lose, Chase? Because he fumbled at the end of the game. Let's go to week 3, the Commanders, because we all know Jaden Daniels outperformed him in the Commanders game. All right, he had 300 yards passing. Jaden Daniels had 254 and 39 more yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown. And we know the blitz came down in his face. He made one more play than Joe Burrow. All right, let's go to the Ravens loss, because I want you to hear me. Let's go to the Ravens loss. That's all good. Let's go to the Ravens loss, right? Joe Burrow, 392 passing yards. That's a lot now. And 5 TDs. It's a bad defense he going against now. Bad defense he going, but then Lamar Action Jackson. What he done do? 350 yards. 55 more yards on the ground, so that's over 400 yards total. 4 touchdowns.
Ooh, so he did more than.
How they lose that game, though? A Joe Burrow interception at the end of the game.
OT, right?
So let's go to the next loss. To the Eagles. All right. Joe Burrow, 234 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Jalen Hurts, more passing yards, a touchdown, 3 rushing touchdowns with his legs. He outplayed Joe Burrow and won that game.
Yes, he did.
All right?
Wow.
The last loss to the Ravens. All right, Joe Burrow, 428 yards passing.
It's a bad defense, sound like.
4 touchdowns.
Hard to beat.
Lamar Action Jackson, 290 passes, 4 more touchdowns. Had the ball in his hands with 2 minutes left in the game, went down there, took the lead. Joe Burrow came back, tied the game, 2-point conversion. It's one-on-one with Jamar Chase, and you throw it to Milton or somebody.
That was that one. Y'all remember that.
Don't make the final play to help your team win that game. And then the Chargers. You watched the Chargers game, they was down 26-0 in the first half. So he came out in the second half and he threw for 356 yards and 3 touchdowns. But Justin Herbert had 300 yards passes, 2 touchdowns. And his team won the game because he outperformed Joe Burrow. So the last loss to the Steelers.
Is that right? 414 passing yards by Russell.
This might be the best one.
Okay. The best one.
309 passing yards, 3 touchdowns by Joe Burrow.
Okay, Joey, okay.
And 1 interception.
Bad defense, you balled out.
One interception, because we all know when Russ came in the game, the Steelers said, we ain't got to play defense. Right. Russell Wilson had 414 yards passing and 3 touchdowns.
He balled out.
He outperformed Joe Burrow.
Him too?
So in his losses, as much as we want to talk about the defense, Joe Burrow ain't delivered, man. Or he might have delivered, but the other quarterback balled a little bit harder than him and won the football
keep it real,
game.
dog. That was a good job, James. Yo,
You know what I'm saying?
That was a breakdown.
Kept going, not even give Chase a chance.
You took 4 minutes.
That's right.
That deserves an applause for the fact that you're trying to discount one of the best throwers to football I've ever seen. Listen. I am in no way a Joe Burrow fan. I am a Ravens fan through and through. I want to see Joe Burrow not succeed as long as he's in Cincinnati. But top 5, that is a lot of quarterbacks to name before Joe Burrow, just because the Bengals haven't made the playoffs, just because Mike Brown and the ownership group for that team does a disservice to the fans of that franchise. Joe Burrow, look at the numbers. Joe Burrow, 2021, 70.4% completion percentage, threw for 4,611 yards. He threw for 34 touchdowns, 14 picks. That's more picks than you'd like, but 34-14, it's good for the Bengals franchise. Next year in 2022, the Bengals go 12-4. Joe Burrow completes 68% of his passes for 4,475 yards, and he throws for 35 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. He's going down a tier. 2 less interceptions. We want to see less. The next year, he only starts 10 games, but he still throws for 67% of his completions, 2,309 yards, and he throws for 15 touchdowns, 6 picks. This past year, my gosh, Joe Burrow throws for 71% completions of it. He completed 71% of his passes. That's unheard of. He threw for 4,918 yards. He threw for 43 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. The only person that was better was Lamar Jackson, which was 41-4. And he was in an offense with Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman and Isaiah Likely and who else? I mean, obviously the Bengals offense is phenomenally talented. Jamar Chase, the best receiver in the game. T. Higgins, the best number 2 in the game by far. And Joe Burrow, the best pure thrower of the football in the game. But we're going to sit here and say that because the Bengals didn't make the playoffs last year because they have no defense, so that he's not a top 5 quarterback. James, I love you. I love that you stick up for Lamar more often than most national media pundits. But you're off base on this one, man. I hate, as a Ravens fan, playing Joe Burrow. I hate that Joe Burrow is as good as he is, and he's playing in Cincinnati. I would be a much bigger fan of Joe Burrow if he wasn't playing for a division rival. And everyone in the AFC North will agree with that because we do not root for division rivals. It's hard. It's hard fought. It's rough and tumble in the AFC North. It's ugly football, but we don't root for division rivals. But to say that Joe Burrow's not a top 5 quarterback when he's probably top 3 or 4, I mean, it depends on where you put Josh Allen. I'm sorry, but Josh Allen was not the league MVP last year. Lamar Jackson was the best player in the league last year. 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Put this in perspective. No quarterback, including Aaron Rodgers, Joe Montana, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, has thrown for more than 40 touchdowns with less than 5 interceptions. Aaron Rodgers has thrown for 40-plus touchdowns with 5, but not less than 5. And if you really look down at those 3 interceptions, 3 of the interceptions were the receiver's fault. And honestly, the 4th was too because Bateman ran the wrong route. But we were sitting here saying that Lamar Jackson couldn't throw the football. We were sitting here saying that Lamar Jackson couldn't produce in the NFL with his arm. And then, lo and behold, he outperforms the best pure passer of the football in the world. You can sit here and say Patrick Mahomes may be better all around. But as far as standing in the pocket when you have time, when you have an offensive line, Bengals fans, you'll know that, and just delivering the football on a dime, on a needle, on a fishing line, accuracy, no one's better than Joe Burrow. And it's crazy to think that he has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins at his disposal. Probably won't have T. Higgins after this year, judging by how the contract is structured, but that's just unfair. Same as it's unfair that you gave Lamar Jackson Derrick freaking Henry. Same as it's unfair that you give Patrick Mahomes throughout even though it wasn't his choice, but you gave him Travis Kelce. You can't really go wrong with these guys, and that's why I can't fathom for myself that anybody would say that Joe Burrow's not a top 5 quarterback. I think Joe Burrow's better than Josh Allen. And if we're being completely honest, many Bills fans, many Josh Allen apologists will disagree with me, but Josh Allen wasn't better than Lamar Jackson last year. Josh Allen only beat Lamar Jackson because the Ravens made so many mistakes as they do every year in the playoffs. Josh Allen threw for $130, I believe, against the Ravens. They didn't beat the Ravens because of Josh Allen. Josh Allen's played well in the playoffs. Josh Allen deserves to be a top 5 quarterback in this game, but Josh Allen was not the most valuable player last year. Now would die on that hill. I don't think Josh Allen's better than Joe Burrow. Josh Allen might be able to move better than Joe Burrow, but can he throw about as good as Joe Burrow? No. Has Josh Allen been able to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs? No. Joe Burrow has. Pains me to say it. Has Lamar Jackson been able to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs? No. He lost an AFC Championship game at home as a favorite against Patrick Mahomes. Still hurts me to this day. But to sit here and say that Joe Burrow's not a top 5 quarterback is asinine, and I think James Jones should know better. And if James Jones ever wants to come on this show and debate me about this, I will gladly take him as a guest anytime because I have tremendous respect for James Jones as a football mind, as a football player, because he was that dude. He was. I don't know if you all remember, but he caught a lot of touchdowns for Aaron Rodgers. He made Aaron Rodgers look very good. But at the end of the day, Joe Burrow's top 5. Joe Burrow's top 3, and that's not in question. Whether your personal list, if you want to take Lamar out and put Josh Allen in, or if you want to take Josh Allen in and put Lamar out. Lamar Jackson's the best quarterback in football and has been for the past 2 years. Patrick Mahomes has got it done when it matters most, but consistently, Patrick Mahomes has 25 interceptions in the past 3 seasons, I believe. Second only to Baker Mayfield with 26. What are you talking about? So at the end of the day, I do appreciate you all tuning in to this episode of the Cory Standing Show. I will not keep your Friday any more than an hour than I already have, but be sure to follow the Cory at the Cory Standing Show on Instagram, at Cory Standing Show on Instagram. Follow me on my Instagram at Cory Standing, at Cory Standing on X/Twitter. Subscribe, hit the bell button to be notified when I drop my live content every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And obviously when we drop new specials as well. So thank you all for tuning into the show. I hope you have a great, fantastic weekend, and we'll see you on Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern. Thank you.